Padme Hum, Om Mani 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 Padme.
Oh my God, Caleb, you're not gonna believe what Tiffany just told me. Okay, so she spent the night at Stevie's house and she said that Stevie totally sleeps with his socks on. And like, let me tell you about Stevie, okay? So Stevie is a guy that I play this Glitter Bunnies game with, and the other day we were playing, and all of a sudden my phone decided to start updating its apps. And then in the middle of this, my mom calls, and she says that the dog is puking, and my dad won't take his shoes off either.
Hello and welcome to number 2, episode 2, and today we're going to talk about how to live a spiritual-based life in a modern world. This is one of the topics that was given to me on social media to talk about, so that's what we're going to talk about today. That's such a broad topic that it's going to be really hard to get into a lot of the nuts and bolts of it, but there's two main things that we can talk about that if practiced can help greatly to do that. One is habits, and the other one is motivation. So let's start off with habits and how to make good habits and why habits are important. Usually what happens when people try to change their life is they try to stop doing something and don't replace it with something else. In doing so, it's really easy to become discouraged because you're basically fighting against the way that the brain actually operates. And let's talk about that. In the course of a day, we do hundreds of thousands of different things. All these little tasks, from brushing our teeth to doing dishes to going to work, all these different things. The way that the brain works in order to make all of this achievable is that it creates neuro shortcuts, which we call habits. That, coupled with muscle memory, allows us to do all of these things. There's no way that the brain could possibly remember all of these things in its all these things to do in like short-term memory. It's just impossible. The brain isn't that big of a computer. So it creates these neuro shortcuts so it doesn't have to. So when we try to change a habit, we are going against the way that our brain works because we're trying to stop doing something that there's already been a shortcut created to do. So we have to replace it with something. We have to create a better habit. Lama Rinchen, one of my teachers, used to always say that habit energy is the best way of changing. And so rather than trying to stop doing a bad thing, we should start doing a good thing. And once we start doing a good thing, then that will kind of offset the thing that we're trying to change. So how that leads to living a spiritual life in a modern world, if you look at a lot of the mystical practices throughout the world, they all kind of have these daily rituals, daily prayers. So one of the things that I love about the Muslim faith is stopping to pray at certain times within your day is kind of a really neat habit to get into, to remind yourself or to reset yourself that you're towards spiritual things. In my own personal practice, I definitely have habits. I get up every morning, and after I take my shower, I'll do my prostrations, and then I'll do my breathing exercises. Then I'll do a sadhana, and then I'll do my meditation. And then throughout the day, I'll do my chants. I'll do Om Mani Padme Hums, and I'll do refuge chants as well. So I try to incorporate my Buddhist practice with everything else that I'm doing through the course of the day. And it's little things too. It's like when I eat, I try to do a medicine Buddha chant. I don't always remember, but I try to do that. And so the idea is that the more that I can incorporate my spiritual practice into my daily routine, the more they become a habit. The more they become a habit, the easier they are for me to do, and the more my mind is centered upon spiritual things. So habit energy is really, 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 really crucial, and it can start really, really small. It's really interesting because I was thinking about this lecture, and I was thinking about how my Buddhist practice evolved, because I it's only been probably the last 5-6 years that I've been really, really serious about specifically Buddhist practice. Before that, I was kind of all over the place and studied all different kinds of mysticism, all different kinds of cultures. But how this all started was I was running a store in Atlanta, and I would light an incense, and as I would light an incense, I would do this brief Buddhist meditation. It was from a sutra, and I can't even remember what it was now. But it was, there was 5 different incense, and I would light 5 a day, and each time that I would light one, I would kind of think about one of these essential Buddhist elements. And just from doing something really, really simple like that, it evolved into, that became more meditative, and then I became more interested in that kind of practice, and it just grew and it 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 grew. So it's kind of like the old adage that if you get up every morning and put on your running shoes, eventually you'll run. You don't have to, be concerned about running. You just get up, put on your shoes, and eventually you will run. And it's the same thing with the spiritual habits. You begin really, really small, and it could be, it doesn't matter what faith you are. You can wake up in the morning and pray. You can wake up in the morning and chant. You could, in the Gnostic tradition, they do sun salutations. So it doesn't really matter what religion you are, what belief system or what lack of belief system you have. Just begin to create those small habits, and then those small habits will grow into bigger habits, and those bigger habits will grow into a lifestyle, and that lifestyle will be then the cornerstone from which you live. So that's the first thing. The second thing that I want to talk about is motivation. Motivation is really, really important, and I really began to grasp that again through my Buddhist practice. In Buddhism, there's 2 major components, and that's motivation and dedication. And when we think of dedication, we're not talking about being dedicated. We're talking about basically dedicating everything that we do to a higher good. So it's kind of like motivation. So in my practice, I start off with my motivation in the morning, and my motivation is to benefit all sentient beings, to help all people everywhere. That's my motivation. So if I start off with that in the morning, then that kind of takes me immediately out of the selfish mind frame that I'm stuck in, and then puts me in a different mind frame. Puts me in more of an altruistic, compassionate mind frame right off the bat. That is automatically going to change my behavior, and automatically going to kind of set me on a trajectory that's more spiritual than typical. If I wake up in the morning and I instantly begin to think about what I have to do that day, or worry about this or worry about that, then that is going to be my trajectory. So setting motivation in the morning is really, 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 really crucial. And if you have trouble remembering it, that's one of those things. I'm not a big fan of affirmations or any of that stuff. We can go into why later, but putting up signs that set proper motivation, I think, is really important, because if we get our mind to think in those lines at the very beginning, that's our first thought, then that really does kind of dictate the course of our day. And if we look at other religions, we see this, in Judaism, there's a tradition of putting on your pants right leg first, and that has to do with starting your day off right, or stepping with your right leg, and there's more to it than that. But it's all about setting that proper motivation and getting started in the right course. In 12-step programs, they talk about starting your day over. If the day is going really, really crappy, you can stop everything and start your day over, and it has to do with that correct motivation. What motivates us? So So that's something to think about, is if we're trying to live a more spiritual life and we're kind of inundated in the modern world, then we need to first ask ourselves, then why do we want a more spiritual life? What do we hope to gain out of having a more spiritual life? Do we want peace? Do we want calmness? Do we want to be more compassionate? What do we want? And then we gear our motivation towards that. What's going to help us to achieve that? And then that becomes our daily motivation. And then we start off doing that. And then at the end of our day, we do our dedication. And the dedication is kind of like a retrospection, sort of. It's like, well, everything that I've done today, I've done it because I've wanted to achieve this, whatever your motivation is. So, for instance, mine is, of course, my morning motivation is to help all sentient beings, to alleviate the suffering of all sentient beings. So that's my morning motivation. My dedication is that everything that I've done today, I did because I wanted to alleviate the suffering of all sentient beings. So that should be kind of like my last thought. And so you see how this kind of creates this cycle. Now, even if I fail miserably in that, and I don't actually do a lot that day to alleviate the suffering of all sentient beings, I'm beginning to plant that seed within my mind. I'm beginning to get my mind to think along those lines. So those are two really, really key things: habits and motivation, and I guess dedication too. And then the other thing, the crucial thing is to be kind to yourself. My current teacher is really good at reminding me that when I say for the benefit of all sentient beings, I have to include myself in that. And if your spiritual practice becomes just another thing that you punish yourself over, then it's definitely not ever going to give you the kind of peace and calmness that you're seeking. So if you miss it one day, or you forget to do it one day, or a couple of days, or a week, or a month, or something happens and you just kind of lose sight of it, don't punish yourself over that. It really has to be something that you find great joy in. You have to be excited about it. I think that kind of comes with motivation. Enthusiasm, there has to be that enthusiasm. My practice I really want to do, and if there's a day that I don't feel like doing it, that I just am not feeling it, then I would rather not do it than force myself to do it, because then it becomes a punishment or something that I'm dreading, and I don't want it to become something that I'm dreading. We have many things in our life that we have to do. My spiritual practice is something that I want to do, and I want to keep it in that realm. So be patient with yourself. It's one of the core tenets is be patient with yourself, and begin by developing strong motivation, and begin by developing better habits. And one more thing to say about better habits, and then we'll close this out. Is years and years ago, I decided that I had too much anger. As my Lamarentian used to say, you have too much angry. And it wasn't that I woke up one day and decided I wanted to get rid of my anger. Well, actually, I take that back. I did wake up actually and decide that I wanted to get rid of my anger. There was people in my life that I saw that my anger was influencing, and it wasn't theirs. It wasn't their anger, and so I realized that I was giving it to them, and it wasn't fair. But I never set out to develop compassion, is what I meant to say. I just wanted to get rid of my anger. I realized, however, that the way to get rid of my anger was to develop compassion. And when I developed compassion, the anger just went away. So I applied exactly what I was talking about at the beginning. Instead of trying to stop something that was already a habit for me, it was already a habit for me to react out of anger to things, I developed a new habit. And that new habit was based on compassion. Once I developed that new habit of looking at things in a more compassionate way, through doing various meditations and things, compassion-based meditations, then the anger was just gone. And not to say that I don't still get anger, but my initial reaction now is not anger. My initial reaction is definitely more objective, more detached, and definitely a lot more compassionate. So that's how using habits can really, really work towards your benefit. A couple of the habits that I have going on again as I do my mantras all the time. There's probably always a running mantra in my mind. Om Mani Padme Hum, as you heard in the entry to this, and various other mantras. So, develop good habits, develop strong motivation, be enthusiastic, and be patient with yourself. And you can definitely live a spiritually based life in a modern world. You don't have to become a renunciate like me. You can do it. So thank you very much. I look forward to talking to you next time. Again, leave some comments down below or send me an email, calebstorms@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you, and send me your questions or recommendations for a future show. And I apologize for the noise, but I figured the noise was appropriate for today's topic. Peace out.